Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy 24/7 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy 24/7 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy 24/7 podcast.
Welcome into the Vandy 24/7 podcast alongside Joey Dwyer. I'm Billy Derrick. We're here to recap Vandy's 86-75 loss to Florida in Gainesville. I think we'll be more positive tonight, Joey, but obviously still some things to clean up on the Vanderbilt side of things. So we'll dive into it. We'll get into it all, and it's all brought to you by The Wash House. Are you dreading laundry days? It's stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy. Let the laundry professionals at The Wash House take care of that for you. They've got 2 locations in Nashville. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry ready to be put away. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. Again, Florida 86, Vanderbilt 75. They covered the initial spread, which was 12.5. It ended up getting down to 10.5 after Clayton was announced that he would be out. But Joey, Vanderbilt falls to 16-2 when they lead at the half. They did have a 1-point lead in this game. This was a war, but really for the first half. I mean, I tweeted a football game broke out there for a few seconds in the first half. The refs let a lot go on both sides. I liked that. I mean, you know, it was even. You know, maybe they let a little too much go, and then in the second half things changed. They stopped letting everything go, Joey, and you know, both teams kind of settled into the game. But there's a lot to get to tonight, and I think there's a good bit of positives to take away. You obviously do still have some negatives. We'll start with you with your initial thoughts on what you witnessed tonight down in Gainesville.
Yeah, I thought Vanderbilt played well enough to beat a lot of teams in the SEC, but made a few mistakes that cause you to not be able to compete with a team like Florida down the stretch. And it did in some ways, but it was also outscored by 12 in the second half. And you look at it, Florida shot 7 for 11 from three-point range in the second half, shot 64% from the field, out-rebounded Vanderbilt by 5. It just felt like there was too much going for Florida, not going enough going for Vanderbilt, even without Walter Clayton on the floor. And then you bring up the 18 for 28 layup mark, and that makes things a lot more challenging, right? Florida just had waves and waves of bodies, and Mark Byington said they expected Florida to be physical, and man, was Florida physical. Alex Condon got just about everything he wanted tonight, and I thought Jalen Carey was really good tonight. He had 15 points. Obviously, the foul trouble really hurt Vanderbilt. Devin McLaughlin also 6 for 9 in the second half, 14 points, I think all coming in the second half. So you don't hate what you got from Vanderbilt's bigs, but you look at Florida and you look at the bodies they had and kind of the physicality that they played with. I didn't think they necessarily pushed Vanderbilt around for a lot of the night, but you could tell that there was one team who had 2 serviceable bigs and then one that had 3 or 4 who were all bigger than Vanderbilt. So a lot to like in terms of what Jason Edwards and Jalen Carey and Devin McLaughlin did tonight, but also a lot of margins where I think Vanderbilt fell short. Again, obviously the 10 missed layups, that's a problem, right? And then obviously Jalen Carey fouling out. I think McLaughlin fouled out in the last second or two.
Yep.
And another stat too, which Will Clinard, a former Vanderbilt baseball player, gave us some knowledge in my Twitter comments tonight. In Vandy's last 4 games in the second halves, they've given up an average of 52 points a game. The real kicker here, though, Vanderbilt didn't get a stop on defense from the 9:31 mark in the second half until Florida's last shot of the game. Can't win like that, Billy, plain and simple.
Wow, I did not realize that. I'm going to start with the free throw number here. Florida shot 23, Vanderbilt shot 12, and Florida shot a better percentage. That they were 14 of 23, 61% from the free throw line. Vanderbilt 7 of 12. It felt like all 5 of those misses were huge. Edwards, he played really well. It's hard to pick on him tonight, right? He had 20 points. He was 7 of 13 from the field, only hit 1 3, but he only shot 3, right? So I thought Florida did a really good job on him, but in 18 or more points in 5 straight games for Edwards. So again, it's hard to pick on him, but he missed a 1-and-1 late, which I thought was big in the moment. He missed another free throw late there. He was 5 of 7. I thought those 2 misses were big. And again, it's hard to pick on him there, but I did want to note that. And Joey, I love Grant Huffman, and I texted you this. He only played 7 minutes, but the fact that he only played 7 minutes, and I thought he hurt them in some moments defensively, and he had a turnover. That is not really working. His role, and again, I feel like ever since he got sick, and after that Mississippi State game, it hasn't really been the same type of serviceable backup for them, and I think that's hurting them a little bit. So they've had to figure some things out there. Like you mentioned, the mismatches in this game at times were pretty glaring, whether it was Condon or even Houck down low. Chinyelu, he had four fouls. He only played 12 minutes, which I thought was big, but their depth down low is ridiculous. I mean,
yeah, Nickel had to guard the 4 and the 5 at times, right?
Yeah, Nickel was on Houck a lot of the game, and even Alexis for Florida, he had 5 points. I thought his 5 points were huge. So, I mean, the mismatches, this is probably the worst matchup for Vanderbilt, at least down low all season, and they just got killed down low. It's too many easy points, I thought, for Florida at times. I want to give a shout out to Carey. I thought Carey played really well. I texted somebody before the game. I had a feeling he would play well. He bounced back from whatever happened, whatever disciplinary thing happened, there before Oklahoma. 15 points, 5 rebounds. He was 7 of 9 from the field. He hit a big 3 as well. He did foul out. So did McLaughlin, like you mentioned. But, if you're going to get that from Carey, you're happy, right? You didn't get a ton from Magnon. He only played 14 minutes. You only got 5 from Nickel. I thought Nickel played okay, but again, I'm going to keep saying this. When Nickel hits 3-4 threes, this team's winning games. Nickel and Edwards only shot 6 threes combined. Like I thought Florida did a really good job on Vanderbilt. From the 3, they only hit 6 threes. And so, you look at that, they're not going to win too many games doing that. I thought the first half, Vinny's defense was really good. They're making everything hard for Florida. But second half, like you mentioned, Joey, I mean, they're averaging 52 points per game, giving up on them in the second halves of these last 4 games. And Byington said it after the game, we've got to figure out ways to get more stops than we have. I mean, the last 9 minutes of the game, they didn't get a stop, like you said. So it's defense for me. Offensively, I'm not too concerned about them on offense. I thought their bench number was good. You had 26 bench points, and Byington talked about that in the post game as well. There's strength in numbers. A lot of these teams starting 5s are really good, but Vanderbilt can have an advantage in a lot of these games on the bench. But I also a big deal in this game. There were some bad calls, right, on both sides. I'm not trying to be a homer here on Vanderbilt. I thought Carey's last foul was a bad call. There were several other bad calls, but I think that's what you're going to get in the SEC this year. But Joey, they stopped letting everything go. I mean, they let everything go in the first half, and I thought that played into the game, and it played to Florida's hands. The fact that the refs kind of swallowed their whistles.
Yeah, I want to go back to defense, Billy. I'm looking at KenPom and the conference-only metrics. Vanderbilt's 15th in the league in defensive efficiency. Last place in effective field goal percentage, free throw attempts and field goals made, or I guess free throws attempted, 15th in the league, last in 3-point defense, second to last in 2-point defense. I mean, that's kind of what we had been worried about earlier, right? Was their defense, and I think for stretches it was good, but starting to catch up to them now when they can't force turnovers. Which, by the way, they're the best team in the league at forcing turnovers, at least statistically. Florida only turned it over 11 times, and I thought a story tonight, too. At halftime, Vanderbilt was up, but it also didn't feel super sustainable. 3 assists to 9 turnovers at the half. That's not their recipe, right? Their recipe is to move it around, get in transition, find guys, help each other out, and they're not going to beat a team like Florida, even without Walter Clayton, without sharing it and without sharing it better than the other team, and just didn't do that tonight. Hogarth had 6 assists, but Obviously not his best outing, 3 for 11 from the field. Tanner was scoreless. Huffman was scoreless. Just didn't get a ton tonight from
Yeah.
a couple of those guys. I thought the 3 main guys were obviously Edwards, McLaughlin, and
Collins.
Carey. Yeah, Collins had a nice night, and I wonder if his role gets expanded a little bit. Obviously, there's some minutes that weren't super productive elsewhere on the roster, and I wonder if he gets some more of those. But I also think that's probably going to be a matchup thing throughout a little bit of the year. So a lot to wonder coming out of tonight, and I think that makes Texas all the more important. The good thing for Vanderbilt, I think they probably would have lost by more and maybe significantly more had Walter Clayton got in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But the good news for Vanderbilt, the committee doesn't care because the committee is not going to remember that Walter Clayton didn't play. And if they remember, it doesn't matter a ton because the metrics won't reflect that. So I think they're fine coming out of the night. It doesn't overly worry me, but I do think it makes some of these fringe games a little more important now that they've had no 2 week here.
Yeah, and a common theme in this game and in a lot of games, SEC games, Joey, is Edwards sitting when the other team goes on runs.
Mm-hmm.
that has become very common, and I don't think you can afford to do that too much more down the stretch here. He played 31 minutes, but I think he could have played a little bit more. Like Will Richard played 39 minutes, and you look at Aberdeen played 35 minutes. They're 2 guards that really played well for them tonight. And, Hogarth, 28. Like, can you play Edwards more than you did? Like, I thought he sat for a while in that. How long did he sit early in that second half, Joey?
Yeah, it was a while.
I mean,
I wonder what the reasoning behind that is. I wonder if it's defensive oriented, matchup oriented. Even then, though, he's your best player. He's your best scorer. You got to get him on the floor more, you'd think.
Yeah. And I thought he did better defensively. I think he's improved defensively. Drew the charge early there on Martin. And again, he could be a liability defensively at times, but that comes with the territory of him. He sat for a while in that second half. Thought he could have played a little bit more. Speaking of the other guard, Will Richard was the MVP. I mean, he was 8 of 11 from the field, 21 points, 5 threes, also had 7 rebounds. Big shot after big shot. Klavchar came up and hit a couple of threes, in a back-to-back stretch in a row that just killed Vanderbilt, and that kind of busted the game open a little bit. But I think offensively, Joey, the key here, and again, you mentioned Edwards, you mentioned McLaughlin and Carey, and even Collins. So I don't think this guy's numbers matter a ton tonight, but you got to get a little bit more from Hogarth. Just a little bit. I don't know what he's averaging point-wise, Joey. Is he around 10, 11?
Something like that. Let me pull it up. It's 10.7, yeah.
Okay. So he's averaging almost 11 points. I think you need to get that, or at least around that if you're Hogarth. Especially if you want to beat a team like Florida on the road. I think you've got to have more from him, especially in a night like tonight. Carey fouls out with just under 5 minutes left. Again, I thought that was a bad call. The foul trouble was a huge issue. And then Todd Golden, he didn't seem to want to shake Carey's hand after the game. I don't know. Also, Carey, you don't see that often. And
when you foul out,
he was talking to the ref. He was like, I just want to go shake his hand. And he went over to Golden. Golden didn't want to shake his hand, which I thought was interesting. But Vandy left points on the table late there. Edwards, like I said, missed a couple of free throws. And then, Joey, Florida hit Vandy with a couple of full court baseball throws that led to scores. And that was something that Golden saw with Vandy's press, where they would have one of their bigs back. Carey got beat. I feel like I'm talking about football now. Carey got beat on a go route there early. And then I think it was McLaughlin that got beat late again, that both led to points. So I think that's an adjustment they're going to have to make. I thought, what'd you think about that 5-second call there late? That it wasn't a 5-second call, but Florida got a timeout. I thought that could have been called late. That could have swung things. I mentioned Carey and McLaughlin, Chris Magnon. I was a little intrigued by him tonight. He only played 14 minutes, Joe. He struggled early, had a turnover early in that game. And I feel like teams have caught on to his gig on this team. Like, he's not going to score a ton, but he's a defender. And I think teams are leaving him like dramatically open.
Yeah, he's got to make the open ones.
Yeah, and there's pressure on him. And he feels the pressure because he's open, but he's not necessarily an offensive threat for this team. So I think, again, there's things this team has to figure out. I think that's one of them. You mentioned the 3-point number, Joey. Florida shot 64% from three in the second half. Vandy shot 33. I mean, that's kind of your ball game there. And Florida was at home, right? You got the comfort of playing at home, but I think the key here is defense, Joey. And they battled. They played hard. I don't think there's a ton to hang your head on in regards to tonight if you're the Commodores, but that defensive number, you said 52 points per game given up by this team in the second half of the last 4 games. Defense is the story, and they're not going to make the tournament if they don't figure out how to get more stops late in these games.
Yeah, for sure. I think defense is something that we had harped on a ton early and then maybe backed off a little bit because we saw some solid defensive performances. But I think you're starting to see kind of our theory about the turnovers come to play a little bit, to where if they don't force more than 14 or 15 turnovers, they're going to be in some trouble, especially if they're not scoring off of them. And tonight, when they score, they scored 15 off turnovers, and that's helpful. But I mean, they only won that battle by 2 points. That's hard to win that way, especially
they've got to win that dramatically most nights to win.
Maybe not against Texas, but against Florida on the road, you sure have to, right? And Vanderbilt was outshot by 16% from 3-point range. Again, the 3-ball is the great equalizer in college basketball. That's why the March Madness upsets happen the way they do. And when you have a team with those kind of bigs and with Will Richard doing what he did, you really can't win by getting outshot by 16%, especially when the turnover battle's there, especially when you leave so many points on the table, like you said. By the way, I'm sure Casey Alexander wasn't super thrilled to see Will Richard tonight on the TV.
Well, or I think somebody tweeted about this. Stackhouse I don't even think Stack recruited Richard.
Not many did.
Out of where was was Richard a local kid?
That was before my Belmont time.
Okay, look. I don't think he was from.
He's from Georgia.
Okay, from Georgia, but still, what a get for Belmont to pluck him out of thin air, but yeah, he was really good, Joey. And when you have Vanderbilt, I feel like misses out on a guy like that. Like they have Edwards, but he's limited in certain ways. Like he got some shots blocked tonight. Vanderbilt doesn't have a guy like a Will Richard that can beat you off the bounce, but it can also beat you from 3, can create his own shot. I know Edwards can do that, but not as consistently. I don't think. I'm not picking on Edwards, but he's not your Will Richard type. That's 6'5". I think Richard could play in the NBA. I'm not totally sure, but they don't have a guy like that, Joe. I feel like they miss out on that at times.
I think more than an Edwards issue, it's like a 3 to 4 guy on the roster issue, to where they've got Hoggard and Edwards, and even those guys don't complement each other excellent.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways they
combat.
Yeah, we don't see them having great games at the same time. That's not a reflection on either of their mindsets. I think it's just kind of how it has to be a lot of the time. Still kind of waiting on both of them to have a great game against a good team, right?
Yeah.
And then you look past them and saying they've got a lot of good guys, but I wonder if they had another Edwards Hoggard level player, if that unlocks some of these guys more. There's a little bit too much pressure on a Tyler Nickel and a Jalen Carey and Devin McLaughlin, guys like that, who I think would be great if you slotted them down maybe one more role. I think you're kind of looking at that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you. And looking ahead, this Texas game becomes huge. It's been huge, I think, looking at it, the last week or two. But I'm trying to look at. Okay, Ken Palm just refreshed the Florida game. Still have Vanderbilt projected to finish 19-12 overall, 7-11 in the SEC. They now have Florida projected, or no, Texas has always been projected a loss. Okay, the projected win is Arkansas here down the stretch. Texas, Ken Palm has Vandy to lose by 1, 76-75. Let's say there's going to be some tense people in black and gold inside Memorial on Saturday. Game of the season. Texas, don't know a ton about them. I know Trey Johnson is really good, and they've got some talent. We'll see how they do tomorrow against Arkansas, but man, that game is big. I mean, is it a must-win in your mind, Joey? I know this team has shown the ability to beat teams like a Tennessee or a Kentucky at home, or even South Carolina, but that's South Carolina. This is, in my mind, a must-win just because of the gauntlet ahead for them.
I don't entirely disagree. I mean, you look at the schedule, Texas, that's winnable, right? And then you play Auburn, number 1 team in the country right now. Tennessee on the road at Thompson-Boling, a place Vanderbilt virtually never wins. You go to Rupp Arena, and obviously Kentucky's sputtering, but I don't think they're going to take Vanderbilt. I don't think they're going to underestimate them. Ole Miss you can beat, but they're a top 25 team. You go to A&M, play a top 10 team on the road, and then Missouri comes to Memorial, a top 15 team. Yeah, I have a hard time saying that's not a must-win game in a lot of ways. Obviously, you've seen them go up and down a little bit. Like, do you think they'd have much greater odds to beat Oklahoma than Kentucky or Tennessee? But, I mean, at some point you got to win the ones you're supposed to if you're going to get to the tournament. That's not a bad loss on the resume, but I think that could really come back to haunt them if they don't get it.
The home games, look, this team has been really good at home. They beat Carolina and Tennessee at home. They beat Kentucky at home, right? They won every non-conference game at home. Their home record is, what's their home record, Joey? They've lost one.
They have lost 1 game at home.
Okay, Mississippi State, yeah. So the home games here, because let's face it, that's where you're going to give yourself the best shot if you're Vanderbilt. The home games, Texas, that's winnable. Number 1 Auburn at home. Likely not going to happen. Let's face it. But again, anything can happen. They beat number 4 Tennessee right now. So I think Vandy could have a puncher's chance. Ole Miss at home. That's a game you can win.
The Malik Dia game.
The Malik Dia game. Missouri at home. That's a game you can win. And the revenge factor and the playing second time factor, you can win that. Arkansas at home, you can certainly win that. And that's the game Ken Palm has them projected to win. Looking ahead, that Georgia game, we say this Texas game could be the season. I think that Georgia game ultimately could probably be this team's season. But either way, tough result for Vanderbilt tonight. But again, not unexpected. They played better. They played tough. They played hard. It was a good bounce back, especially in that first half from what happened in Norman. But they lose 86-75, Joey, and I'll send it to you for any final thoughts you've got. I didn't learn a ton about this team. I think we're kind of at the point where the team, they are what they are, and we've learned a lot about them. I'm not saying they can't make any more adjustments, but this was not totally unexpected. And if anything, it was a good bounce back. They could have easily folded the 10 up there, in the second half and lost by 25 or even 30. But they battled and they played well tonight. There were some mistakes, of course, but this was not totally unexpected.
It also told me that Saturday didn't really haunt them a ton. I thought they came out ready to play, obviously led at halftime. Blackton said if there are efforts like that and their toughness is like that, they'll win games. And I don't entirely disagree with that statement. I think they're fine. But, man, they've got to start winning some of these close games. And that's where I kind of stand right now. It's kind of wait-and-see mode for me on if they can get the Texas game. Can they get Georgia? Can they get Arkansas? Things along those lines. And I think you're also neglecting a pretty important storyline here. Saturday's also the Malik Presley return, which I think is very highly anticipated.
How many minutes is he averaging this year?
Is he redshirting?
That could be
know
a good point.
Jamie Vincent has played, right? Malik Presley is redshirting, it looks like.
Is Jamie Vincent at Texas?
He is.
I totally forgot about that.
Jamie Vincent is not redshirting. He's played in 8 games and is averaging 2.5 points a game. I thought the plan was for him to redshirt, but I guess not.
Oh, the Joey Nuggets. I love it.
He's shooting 81% from the field, Billy. Why is he not getting more run?
So the Jamie Vincent and Malik Presley game for Texas, but no, must-win game. Looking forward to being there Saturday. It'll be a noon start at Memorial. Second half. I mean, this is turning into a second half season for this team. I got to find ways to play better in the second half, specifically on defense.
Billy, did you say they were a second half team after the Kentucky and Tennessee game? You better not have.
I don't think I did I?
I hope not. I thought I heard that somewhere. I hope it wasn't from you.
I don't think I did it. But I mean, after those games, you could have argued that.
I hope it wasn't you.
Good comment from Vandy Dandy. After beating Tennessee and Kentucky, if they miss the tournament, it's a disappointment. I think that's it's interesting to think about because before the season, before those 2 games, you would have said missing the tournament was not a disappointment because it was not an expectation. But you beat Tennessee and Kentucky at home, Joey. that turns into an expectation. And
Mm.
I'm with you. It would certainly be a disappointment for the fan base. I think they can. I still think this team is good, Joey. And they might just do it by an eyelash, right? And they might do it by getting 7 and having to do some work in Nashville, which they certainly can.
Right.
But man, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens here.
It's a meaningful basketball in West End in February. What could be better for this fan base? It's been a long time.
It has. It's been a long time, and don't forget till you get to March. We'll see what their record is in March, because there was a certain coach that had a really good March record.
Oh, come on! It has been a long time. Maybe a long time's a little overstated, but it's been a while since Vanderbilt fans have known all the players and have cared this much. At least last season, it was definitely missing. Like, we weren't talking about individual guys, and this guy needs to step up. I mean, that's a step in itself for this program, because that means they're playing meaningful basketball, and that means that what these guys do on a nightly basis matters, and it didn't at this point last year.
Well, it'll certainly matter Saturday, Vanderbilt in Texas at noon. Joey and I will be there. A whole crew will be there as well to cover it.
Except Bigsby. Bigsby will be on color for the Tennessee State game on ESPN Plus. Tune in if you're free.
Oh, Bigsby big timing us on Saturday.
I'm so proud of Bigsby. Bigsby is cooking.
He's a grinder. Let him cook. Bigsby will not be there, but Joey and I, either Robbie or Chris, I assume, will be there. But huge game for Vanderbilt. But they fall tonight, 86-75. Appreciate everybody tuning in to the recap. That's Joey Dwyer. I'm Billy Derrick. Thanks for checking out another episode of the Vandy 24/7 podcast.